it's really done under the radar, and I don't think a lot of people know enough about it.
In fact, in that regard, the government wasn't so much under the radar. It was the news media in Canada. They absolutely blew this portfolio.
Why do you think so? Why do you think? Was it catchy enough for them, or what? They would rather follow the Paris Hilton story? What's the issue?
A lot of times, the media has become entertainment today.
Absolutely. It's a network. In the 70s, that film was brilliant. It is. When I look at CNN and all that stuff, it's interesting when we live in a place where Jon Stewart, who's a pundit, is now, or a comic genius, is considered the most trusted man in news. That says a lot, actually.
Let me ask you a question, and I'm not trying to get personal to you, but let's get into your profession.
Right.
News and what you do.
Right.
Have the pay scales gone up or down?
Well, I would say down. Yeah.
And let me ask now more specifically.
Yeah.
In investigative journalism, what's happened to the Woodward and Bernsteins? See, there's a book by Bill Bryson. It's a great book. It's called Down Under. At least that's the name of it in Australia. There might be a different name up here. He starts the entire book by saying, how important is Australia to the country of the United States? And he says, well, and I could be wrong by a couple of numbers, but the gist of it was, the New York Times has mentioned Australia 13 times in the last year, and the Washington Post maybe 16 times.
Okay.
But combined, the two newspapers have mentioned Pamela Anderson's breast 256 times.
Wow.
So his point was that the entire continent and country of Australia is 1/13 as important as, Pamela Anderson's breasts.
Right. So this has become, and that's really interesting when people don't even know that the rights have been changed, but they'll know who's now dating who or who broke up with who. There is a sensationalized journalism and news which has taken over, but some argue at some points, like they'll say, well, there's PBS, there's BBC, there's these other, but they're not attracting people.
Okay, very good question. One of the problems in the United States is that they're so wrapped up into the United States that if it doesn't affect them, they're not interested.
Yeah.
PBS actually did a story on the Lost Canadians, which I found interesting because I couldn't get Canada. I did get the CBC to do spotty segments. Maybe once a year they would come in and do something. To tell you how bad it got, when we won, your rights were changed. 1 million people, this is upwards of 750,000 to 1 million people are now Canadians that weren't just a couple of years ago because of the work that we've done.
Yeah.
Willard Boyle, who just won the Nobel Prize a year ago, October, he's a lost Canadian. When he won the Nobel Prize, the Canadian media was saying it's a former Canadian. Now they understand it's a real Canadian. This guy, I mean, the Hollywood Lost Canadians are a who's who of Hollywood, all the way back to Jack Warner, Mary Pickford, and Louis B. Mayer.
Right, from St. John.
And so that's correct.
Yeah.
And going forward, from Matthew Perry to Oliver Platt to Keanu Reeves to Kiefer Sutherland to Paula Abdul, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But what I find interesting is that nobody was remotely aware that these laws were changing, and nobody seemed to care. I would go to the CBC, and they almost, I mean, we had 2 reporters that were censored by CBC, and I have the names of the reporters, and they will agree that this happened. CTV really didn't cover it.
Yeah.
Neither did Maclean's. The Globe and Mail, I've been writing for over 10 years, asking them to do a story, starting with Edward Greenspun when he was editor-in-chief, and now going to John Stackhouse. I mean, it's actually, in a journalistic standpoint, it's complete negligence.
It's almost a type of censorship in a way. Like it doesn't provide people with information that it directly affects them. But my question is, how much of the responsibility is on the citizen to keep up to date with this information, and how much of it is responsibility of the media?
Well, let me get back. One group I wanted to mention was. It was at the time CanWest, CTV Global Media.
Right.
Or excuse me, CanWest and Global National.
Okay.
I made a mistake on that. Global National and CanWest, other than the Vancouver Sun, virtually ignored our story. And finally, I got Global national to do our story, or do a story that had something to do with us. And here's what it was. 10 days after the bill passed, it had showed a likeness, or showed myself and my wife marching in Parliament with the citizenship minister at the time, and the news story was about foreign lobbying groups coming to Ottawa to lobby in favor of foreign strippers.